From the Daily Caller, LA Times columnist dismisses Women's March leaders' anti-Semitism. A columnist for the Los Angeles Times dismissed the accusations of anti-Semitism levied against the leaders of the Women's March because she said they are advancing the causes of women in a piece published on Friday. You know what I absolutely love about the intersectional regressives is that they really are in favor of the idea of sacrificing one group for another, right? So what's going on with this? You've got a bunch of anti-Semites who are the organizers of the Women's March, and they have crazy fringe conspiracy ideas about the Jews, and they are quite, honestly, in my opinion, nuts. It's like this ridiculous idea, conspiracy theory, and I've talked about this so much. I'm so frustrated with the idea that one of the largest intersectional organizations, the Women's March, being run by anti-Semites, is somehow still being supported by the left. Okay, in Chicago, they canceled the Chicago Women's March partly because of the anti-Semitism. Bravo. Alyssa Milano, Deborah Messing have called them out. Bravo. But why? Why is it that the left has absolutely no problem sacrificing one group for the sake of another? In this instance, they have no problem sacrificing the Jewish community because it benefits women. And the New York Times has basically confirmed what the story from Tablet, yes, the leaders of the organization have ties to Louis Farrakhan and are anti-Semites. Another issue that gets another honorable mention is affirmative action, especially what happens with Asians. Asians are one of the smallest minorities in this country. And so in their pursuit of equity, they have no problem sacrificing the Asians to own the whites. That's not my talking point. It's literally, there was a tweet, I believe it came from Vox. They said Asians should accept that they will face detriment because otherwise, I'm sorry, it was the ACLU. They said, if Asians fight affirmative action, they will only benefit white people. Effectively, let's sacrifice Asian representation to own the whites, as it's put. Sacrificing anybody based on these characteristics is absurd. Why? How can this group, the Women's March, how can you support this, right? If they're anti-Semites, but it benefits women, aren't you admitting that intersectionality isn't your true pursuit? Like the idea of intersectionality is that a Jewish person faces discrimination, a woman faces discrimination, but a Jewish woman faces unique discrimination. If you're willing to sacrifice the Jewish part, you're flat out saying intersectionality doesn't matter. Well, let's read what they have to say. The piece titled, "Can You Admire Louis Farrakhan and Still Advance the Cause of Women?" The answer is no, but they put maybe so, life is full of contradictions, was written by Robin Abkarian. The article focused on the fact that the Women's March was started by women who were upset at the outcome of the 2016 election, and she shared her personal experiences from the march as well. Abkarian then transitioned the piece to known anti-Semite and Nation of Islam leader, Louis Farrakhan. Three of the Women's March leaders, Linda Sarsour, Carmen Perez, and Tamika Mallory, have ties to Farrakhan and have personally expressed weird anti-Semitic conspiracy theories as reported by the New York Times and Tablet magazine. It's a fact. Get over it. You need to disavow these people. Personally, I find Farrakhan's worldview vile, she wrote. Yet I think it is possible to be repulsed by his hateful rhetoric about white people, especially Jews, and still appreciate some of the empowerment work that he has done in the black community, including leading the 1995 Million Man March to promote African-American family unity. Sarah Rumpf on Twitter said, if she asked if it was okay to admire Hitler for expanding the Autobahn and launching Volkswagen, people would justifiably think she was nuts. A more salient point. There are plenty of people on the left and right willing to work on issues important to women who are not anti-Semites. You know what? She's right. Is it really that hard to say, get the fringe weirdos out of here? Stop supporting racists and anti-Semites? Look at what happens with Antifa in Portland, screaming racial slurs at police. Oh, but the left is going to say, oh, but you know what? They're fighting fascists, so we're going to let that one slide. Why? You're encouraging racist behavior. When they go out and they yell at the Proud Boys racial slurs, why would that be acceptable? It's not. Neither is this. Another emphasis of the article was the hypocritical nature of a march dedicated to supporting minorities while also excluding one of the most targeted groups of people. However, after Abkarian pointed out that hypocrisy, she then turned it on Trump supporters, asking how they could be willing to overlook his constant and casual expressions of racism. Maybe it's because there's a different definition of racism. But I'll admit, too, there are certain things Trump has said he should be criticized for, you know. Trump's not a perfect individual. I think he's crass and crude, okay? But there's a big difference between Trump being a mean person and Louis Farrakhan actually telling everyone that a group of people based on their race are involved in some kind of fringe conspiracy to take over the world and other weird conspiracy theories. It's about nuance, okay? Do I think Trump is bad? I actually do, in terms of his rhetoric, for sure. But I certainly think Louis Farrakhan is the paramount of bad, at least as it goes today. Am I upset that Trump says mean things to people and about people? Yeah, I would prefer it if he didn't. I won't support him because I think he represents bad things in our culture. But how will you compare Louis Farrakhan to Donald Trump? Are you kidding me? That's insane. According to a piece in Tablet magazine, President Mallory accosted a Jewish woman in attendance at the planners' first meeting over an anti-Semitic claim that was pushed by Farrakhan despite being proven false. Tablet also reported that the Nation of Islam provided security and acted as drivers for the leaders. That sounds to me like much more than affiliation. That sounds like direct involvement. They say that, what did they say? Have ties to Farrakhan. That Linda Sarsour, Carmen Perez, and Tamika Mallory have ties to Farrakhan. Daily Caller, I think he could have gone a little harder than that by saying they're directly involved with the organization. They use these people are their security and drivers. David Reich Hale responded to LA Times saying, alternative question. Can you advance the cause of women without leaning on anti-Semites? I'll save you time. The answer is yes. And he would be correct. In October, Farrakhan referred to Jewish people as termites during a speech to mark the 23rd anniversary of the Million Man March. Abkarian's column failed to mention either of these specific points. And when Farrakhan said this on Twitter, what did Twitter do? Well, he was certainly reported, and he gets reported all the time, and Twitter said it's not a violation to refer to Jews in that way. And that's amazing. As Eric Weinstein put it, it's almost like there's a different set of rules for one political tribe, even though Farrakhan is like, if you take Farrakhan, copy everything he believes, make him white, congratulations, you have like a neo-Nazi identitarian type. Maybe identitarian isn't the right word to use, because identitarian doesn't imply necessarily that you're anti-Semite, but you effectively have like a neo-Nazi. What's the difference? He advocates for one racial group and against another. The only difference is that he's not white. And yet this is supported. And this is what's really funny about the Women's March and the idea of identitarianism and intersectionality. It's why there's something really interesting I noticed. And in my opinion, I believe that people like the Women's March founders want to demonize white people on purpose because it pushes them towards other fringe conspiracy theorists. It should be no surprise to anybody that certain groups of people who advocate for white identity have an overlap with anti-Semites and neo-Nazis. Like, they don't like Jewish people. They believe the exact same thing that Farrakhan does, except the only difference is one advocates for black identity, one for white identity. So it works out really well. If you don't like a group of people, like the Jews, that you would organize in such a way to criticize white people and try and push them as hard as possible to joining other groups that may hold the same views as you do against Israel or the Jews. It's very fortuitous, I would say. I don't think it's a grand conspiracy or anything. It's just that both sides have their identitarians, and both sides have their anti-Semites. Not everyone on the left is an anti-Semite, not everyone on the right is, no, don't get me wrong. And I don't like using left and right, but the point is, they're almost, I wouldn't even call it a mirror image. Farrakhan represents like a neo-Nazi leader almost perfectly. Anyway, Anna Kate responded, are you making excuses for anti-Semites? Interesting. Not surprised, we said this all along that the left really are the true Nazis and fascists. I don't like using those terms, but I will say I truly believe the left is infected with white supremacists. You have people, mostly white progressives, the progressive, according to the Hidden Tribe study done by More in Common with YouGov data, progressives tend to be, they're overwhelmingly white. They're more than twice as likely to make six figures. And what happens is they truly believe they are smarter. We saw the story from Yale, where white progressives, will act stupid when talking with minorities. Conservatives don't do that. Why? Because these progressives are racists and white supremacists who believe they really are better than minorities, and the poor non-whites need your help from the great old white savior. And that's where my worldview kind of comes in. Because with my heritage, being mixed, I have been told by these people I'm just a white person who has no idea, and I've actually been insulted and attacked by white supremacists. I've seen both sides. And that's why I think doing this, the identity based on race is, overwhelmingly bad. Now, don't get me wrong, I think to a certain degree, like, nothing's absolute. There's nuance in identity politics. I typically am opposed to it because I think it's divisive. But anyway, they end the article by saying, the column concluded saying, while organizers of the Women's March battled over who said what to whom about Jewish people when, and the merits of a noted anti-Semite, American women stood up by the millions and changed the country. For that, everyone involved in the Women's March can take a bow. Yes, take your bow, right behind the anti-Semites, right behind the racists, and be proud that you stood behind them, supported them, made them famous, wealthy, and gave them more power to do what they do, to demonize people based on their ethnicity. Congratulations. That's who you're standing behind. Anyway, thanks for hanging out. I'll see you guys tomorrow on the main channel at 4.